Hello and welcome to this special discussion on the ongoing agitation by farmers union across the country and the negotiations that are going on. Still, we've not found the government and the farm union leaders have not found any middle ground so far. The positions have in fact hardened. Today we have with us a farm leader who's from the south, who's from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, who works with small farmers, Kiran Vissa, who works with small farmers in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Welcome to our show, Kiran. We have Kiran. Yeah, we have Kiran with us, particularly because he represents farmers from the south, and there has been a lot of propaganda, I would say, that this farmers movement or farmers protest is confined to Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP and thereabouts. So Kiran, I'll start by since you're also part of your organization that you represent, Raitu Swaraj Vedika. It's part of the All India Kisan Sangharsh coordination committee, and there's a working group of which you are a part, which is contributing to the ongoing negotiations. Now, tell us what is the latest. We would want our viewers to know what is going on there.
After the November 26th, 27th protest started, and the farmers came to the Delhi gates and sat on the roads there. There have been 3 rounds of negotiations, and the first round was basically the government trying to lay down the ground that these acts are all good and so on. Only in the second round they brought up talk of that they would be ready to make certain amendments but not withdraw the acts. And in the third meeting also it kind of went on in the same way. On the farmers' part, they made it clear, the farmer organization representatives, that this is not just a matter concerning only Punjab farmers or just Punjab and Haryana. They insisted on an all India representation and the fact that this is an all India issue. Therefore, that is the framework in which it needs to be discussed. And secondly, they also made it clear that these acts have fundamental problems, in the basic premises of the acts itself and what they are trying to do. Therefore, tinkering with small amendments or some clause-wise amendments is not going to cut it. Therefore, they are insisting on repeal. So that has been a clear position of the farmer organizations. So the latest is that as you know, Home Minister Amit Shah, who's also the leader of the ruling party, he invited the farmer leaders for a separate meeting. Where he basically said that the government would submit a written proposal to the farmers' organizations. It would send a written proposal, and that would constitute, what the government's offer to the farmers, so to say. So that was received yesterday, and what's the most disappointing thing is that the so-called proposals that the government put forward, which essentially had some 8 points. 3 or 4 of them are completely insubstantive. I mean, they didn't make any commitment on anything. But even the 4 points where they were making some kind of a commitment to make amendments in the acts, were very insubstantial in terms of addressing the farmers' concerns.
Which ones?
The farmers. There are 3-4 points which they made. We can go into the details. Basically, on the APMC. Do you want me to just specify the 3-4 points, the key points from yesterday's offer?
Where the government is willing to make legal changes. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So basically, the government said that in the APMC Bypass Act, what we are calling as the APMC Bypass Act, it has a long name, which doesn't really make that much sense. So the government has said that it can give space for state governments to charge market cess outside the APMC mandis also. That's one thing that they said. And they also said that the state government can register traders outside the mandis. And then they also said that any disputes could also be referred to courts. So these are the three substantive points that they made on the APMC Bypass Act. But the point is that they fall far short of what the actual problems are within the Act. It is good, if the mandi, if the market cess is extended to outside the mandis also, it kind of goes a little bit of, of the way towards making some kind of a level playing field. But the key point is that this act creates a whole unregulated market space outside the APMC mandis, unregulated for the traders and for the companies. It is not subject to the state APMC acts which are in place, and therefore none of the state government officials, whether it's agriculture officers or the village level to district level, even the district collectors, and nobody can actually intervene to solve any problems that the farmers have. So this unregulated market space is the key issue that the farmers are raising, that actually regulated market space is in the interest of the farmers. And if some improvements need to be made in the regulated market space, we welcome, some improvements to be made in that. But you are completely setting aside the regulated market space and want to create an unregulated market space. That's the crux of the problem. And the government says that, we are allowing the APMC mandis also to remain. But the thing is, once you create an unregulated market space outside, then any traders or companies would hardly want to buy inside the regulated market space. They would want to buy only outside the regulated market space, which is already happening. About 40% of the trade has already shifted to the unregulated market space, and this would lead inevitably to a collapse of the APMC mandis, which is what the farmers are pointing out. So this substantive point that the farmers are making, which is strikes at the core of this act, has not been actually addressed by the proposal. So similarly, the issues with respect to Contract Farming Act, with essential commodities, those have not been addressed in any substantial way. So the government essentially is making a show of putting in writing whatever they already were talking about in the December 3rd meeting, but have not gone beyond, to understand and address the issues that the farmers are saying. Now they just have a kind of an opportunity to say that, okay, we have made an offer, the farmers have rejected it. But the truth is that it's a very insubstantial, response to the issues that the farmers have raised.
So Kiran, you're saying this is the core issue, right? This is what your national working group feels is the core issue, what you just told me.
It is one core issue, one core issue with one of the acts. Yeah, there are other issues also, but basically it is a core issue, yes.
Yeah, tell me, Kiran, I'm also told, so basically you're saying that we can't have a situation where there is one nation and two markets, one regulated and the other unregulated, so it will create a non-level playing field, right? It's a Could you describe the situation? I mean, I just thought of a parallel. Suppose the stock markets today, which operate under regulation, there are brokers, there are buyers, sellers. Suppose you say tomorrow you come up with a policy that people should be allowed to buy and sell shares outside the stock market without any regulation.
Exactly.
So so it will. So it's a similar. Would you say it's a similar situation? It will create a chaotic situation.
Yeah. In principle, I have also
outside will not have to pay any taxes, no security transaction tax, no SEBI regulation, nothing. So is that are you suggesting that a similar situation is being created?
It is a parallel. Yes, it is a parallel, and I have also said this in a couple of places. So basically, see, the regulation has a purpose. For example, the whole existence of SEBI and so on. There are many things there, apart from, the fees on the transactions, there are rules to prevent insider trading. There are rules to, regulate how the stocks are placed and how they're sold, so that, somebody can't take and manipulate the whole market to their advantage, especially the big players. That's the whole concern, right?
Yeah.
And that is the concern that the farmers are placing here, that you create an unregulated market, especially in this case where the small and marginal farmers are large in number, but each of them is very weak, in terms of both their economic power as well as their legal power in terms of handling any legalities and so on the one side. On the other side, you have a increasingly consolidated agri-business companies which are coming up, as well as big traders and so on. On the other side, unless there is a regulation which protects the interests of the farmers, farmers would find it difficult. And in fact, farmers have been asking for expansion of the marketplaces, and in fact even this government had promised in 2018. They were singing a different song.
They said
they were saying that actually
22,000 more
22,000 exactly 22,000 rural hearts will be upgraded with facilities which will be kind of similar to the APMC market yards, so that farmers have more access to these kind of regulated market spaces, which is exactly what the farmers want. But now they're going completely in the opposite direction by saying that somehow the APMC market yards are the villains, and you're freeing the farmers from the clutches of that, which is complete false propaganda. Because under existing acts, before this act was brought, farmers had complete freedom to sell anywhere, sell in whatever quantities, to sell to whomever. They had no restrictions. The propaganda that this is giving some new freedom to the farmers is completely false, and that can be really checked out. I mean, I can present the
you're suggesting that that the freedom that these laws bring are more accorded more to the traders, right, and the private sector,
traders and the buyers, agribusiness corporations.
And you're also making this. If I'm not mistaken, you're making this point that a completely unregulated free market will actually hurt the farmers and will impinge on their current freedoms, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I would not use just a small correction to what you said before. I would just not even use the word free market. I'm saying unregulated market versus regulated market, because this whole thing about why are you opposing free markets and so on, basically there is no free market. No, there is an unregulated market. There's a regulated market.
Because why I'm saying free market is, in my view, at the moment, the farmers in India and probably in other rest of the world are probably subjected to the most brutal free market principles. They are scattered. They are small. They can't decide their prices. They can't decide their output from price signals, because they don't get adequate price signals, because world over, farm economics is highly subsidized. So it's very difficult for them to deal with prices also. So no, what I'm getting at is, when the government describes this as a 1991 moment, so it is probably a 1991 moment for the traders and private sector, not necessarily for the farmers. Because in 91, industry was delicensed, and industry was able to produce more and also set prices, because each industry would have about 5-6 players, so they had some control over prices also, right, and output. But in this case, would you say it's a misnomer to call this 1991, because the farmers don't have any control over either prices or output, right? Is that a concern?
Right. See, I don't think actually there is a parallel between what happened with the industry in 1991 and now what they are claiming to do for the farmers. As if farmers were shackled earlier, and then see, farmers were subject to very little regulation. Farmers themselves, in terms of what they produce, in terms of what they sell, where they sell, how much they manage to store, how much they manage to sell, when they manage to sell, they were subject to practically no regulation even before these acts. Okay, 1991 was a situation where the industry and small businesses were subject to a lot of regulation, and those regulations were removed. The merits and demerits of that's a whole different thing. Here there's no parallel, because farmers were not subject to any such restrictions, but farmers were actually victims of a economic system where, even though there was no regulation, they actually were forced to sell because of the economics. they were forced to sell immediately after harvest. All the paddy gets harvested, let's say in November, and all the millions and crores of farmers growing paddy are forced to go to the market immediately because they don't have finance, they don't have a holding capacity, they don't have storage, and therefore they were subject to minimum very low prices that they get, and after that the rest of the value chain is in the control of other people. And unless and a lot of profits are being made there. So in the agri business and the food business is actually a profitable business, but that is going mostly to the people at the other end of the value chain, and farmers were getting very little of it. So in this situation, actually farmers should be getting more of their share in the value chain. So that means that they should have more control over what happens after their primary production in terms of processing, in terms of storage, and so on. That is the direction in which the the system needs to go. Rather, what these reforms do is that they give more control over the value chain to the big corporates, opening the floodgates. And once that entire thing goes into the hands of Reliance and Walmart and whoever is ready to come in, including our Desi Adani's, Heritage, and so on, right? The more they get consolidated, the more farmers lose.
Okay. Now the crux of the issue, Kiran, now, let me bring you back to the core issues involved. The core issue since 2014, since the time Prime Minister Modi made a promise that based on MS Swaminathan Commission report that farmers will get 50% returns over their total cost, C2 cost, comprehensive cost, which includes rental value of the land as well as depreciation and interest costs that they incur. Now, that's where the whole, correct me if I'm wrong, this whole distrust that the farming community has with this government, would you say it goes back to that history? And after that, the way goalposts kept shifting, same government goes to Supreme Court saying it's not possible in 2015, then they change the goalpost to doubling of farm incomes. Now, even the supporters, economists who support the government, like Ashok Gulati, they also say that doubling of farm income is not possible by 2024. If that were to happen, the agriculture sector has to grow by 15%. That's what I think Ashok Gulati says, 12 to 15%. Who supports these new farm laws?
Yeah, and the goalpost is 2022, not 2024.
Yeah, so 2022. Yeah. So the point is now. Are these now the government is trying to present these farm laws as a magic wand? Now what is the core issue now? The farmers want some minimum returns. Now I want to bring you back to another very important part of the discussion. Like how central is MSP to this whole debate? MSP worked into the law because the government says prices can never be worked into the law. Now, from what I heard from your initial comments, you suggest that the core issue really is this whole uneven playing field, regulated, unregulated markets, two markets which they are creating which will destroy the current APMC system. Now, is that a bigger issue, or is MSP being worked into the law is a bigger issue? Because I'm told that the farmers are happy if all these laws are withdrawn and MSP is not legislated it's not put in law, but the current system continues. Current system as in before the law, before the farm laws. So will you be satisfied with that? Will farmers be satisfied with that?
No, actually the farmers have also been asking for MSP to be guaranteed. It's not just declared in 23 crops, 24 crops. No, guaranteed. When I say guaranteed, I mean guaranteed legislatively, legally, and that has been a demand of the farmer organizations for the last 3-4 years, and it is a very key issue even in the current agitation. If you speak to any of the farmers, that they are saying that these laws should be repealed, but it's no use just only going back to the situation of May 2020. We actually need to be in a better situation in terms of ensuring that all the farmers get MSP.
So you want
and
so you want these farmers want these laws repealed and then some fresh law to be brought in, is it?
Yeah, a law on MSP, law on a guarantee of MSP.
Okay, and what about the law on the removal of limits on stock holding by traders or private sector, does that, are farmers particularly concerned about that?
See, farmers are also, very much concerned about that, which goes back to the, what we were talking about a little earlier. See, basically, all these three laws, we see them as coming as a package.
Okay.
Basically, the purpose of the package, though now being on the defensive, the government has started saying that these laws are all for the freedom of the farmers. But actually, these laws, all three of them seen together, are about giving a more free playing field for big corporates to come into agribusiness, particularly the food business. That's the crux of it. So the removing all the food commodities from the Essential Commodities Act is also part of the same thing. Basically, they are saying that, if let us say Adani's or some other corporations have some kind of a hesitation to put in more money into this because they don't want any government regulation to step in and place some restrictions on how much they can store and how much they can move and so on. So they have been lobbying pretty hard and to actually remove any kind of regulation or restrictions. And under the under the COVID, let us say, blanket, where nobody can actually come out and protest seriously, they have actually pushed through these things, though they were never discussed in the public domain earlier, right? So with the Essential Commodities Act also, it's part of the same thing, where you are giving much more freer and unregulated playing field to the agribusiness corporations, which will eventually lead to the agribusiness corporations taking over and pushing out the small marginal farmers from the game. And already the bargaining capacity of the small marginal farmers with respect to the agribusiness and the traders is very weak. Instead of strengthening the bargaining capacity of the small marginal farmers, you are actually weakening through this whole series of three laws. So therefore, that is also a very serious issue. And then the other aspect of the Essential Commodities Act is that there is also consumer interest involved. There's been a long-standing principle that consumer prices of food is something of serious concern to the government. Here, what the government is doing is it is giving away any power to regulate that it has, except in very extraordinary circumstances, which may actually never happen. And especially for the bigger corporations, they will never be subject to any kind of limits on this, which they are happy about. But the government actually should not be happy about, because they are giving up power which could be crucial to them in various situations.
Okay. So, Kiran, give me, since you represent small farmers in Andhra, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, what kind of returns do small farmers get today? Okay, people say Punjab, at least they have some MSP going, right? Now, in the last season, I'm told that rice, which was produced in Bihar, sold at, I think, 40% less than the MSP, which was 1,800 rupees per quintal. Now, there is no MSP really in other states. Now, how do you reconcile the objectives of farmers in Punjab and those in other states? Because I heard the other day, I heard Chengal Reddy from Andhra Pradesh, he's a farm leader, saying that he represents farmers who produce turmeric, cotton, etc. And he says that they also want a framework reforms so that those farmers get good prices. Now, what are these reforms? The word reform gets bandied about. Now, tell me, what sort of comprehensive reforms can farmers themselves come up with to ensure two things, Kiran? I'm very particular about this. One is sustainable agriculture. Now, it is a fact that there's a consensus that Punjab should not be growing so much rice. MSP is fine, MSP can be given, but Punjab should diversify into other crops. And this could be the issue in other states also, where there is MSP, where MSP works, maybe Western UP or, now, how do we deal with this broader issue where you balance the needs of sustainable agriculture environmentally and certain minimum guaranteed income to farmers as per Swaminathan Commission, and a kind of sustainable agri-economics. Now, experience is that all the Western so-called capitalist societies or economies are subsidizing farm sector to an extent where I have read the latest OECD numbers. 40% of incomes, farm incomes, are subsidized in Europe, even China and Japan, etc. Are we going down that path, or can we come up with a different model? And I just want to understand this from you. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, many points you have brought in. Venu, I'll try to address, one by one. Yeah, or just taking off on the last bit, where you said, refer to the OECD report. The same OECD report actually very clearly brings out that the net subsidy that the Indian farmers receive,
it's much less.
Right?
Yeah.
No. It is, it's not much less. It is minus 14%. It is a negative 14%, right? So, which means that it's actually the Indian farmers who are subsidizing the economy of the country. So,
I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah.
Right. So, I'm just saying that when we are talking about how much subsidies the farmers in the other countries are getting, we should also remember that the economic policies in the country have been very heavily loaded against the farmers, which is what is represented by this figure, of minus 14% negative subsidy to farmers, which means that the farmers are subsidizing the economy, rest of the economy, out of their own pockets. Due to the policies of the government, right? In that context, there is no, we are much further away from the situation in the West where they're getting 30-40% positive subsidy. I'll be very happy if we get to a net zero subsidy or, net low subsidy, positive subsidy for the farmers, right? So that's number one. But how do we get there is the question. The second thing that I would like to say is that this whole thing about, MSP is only relevant for 2.5 states, Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh. I'm saying that that's also a false narrative. This is something that we need to be very clear about. Because the point is that if you take a paddy, right? Farmers in Andhra Pradesh, largely, across Andhra Pradesh, not just in, a couple of districts or something, get something which is very close to the MSP for paddy. In Telangana also they get. In Western Odisha also they get, right? There are parts in which they don't get. For example, Bihar is one place where actually farmers get much lower than MSP, right? But I'm just saying that MSP is actually significant for farmers in much larger part of India than just the Punjab and Haryana. That's number one. Number two, when we are talking about farmer organizations are talking about, when AKSS is talking about minimum support prices, we are clearly saying that minimum support prices are currently declared for 24 crops, right? But the fact is that the government doesn't implement the minimum support price or ensure the minimum support price in almost all the crops, in just paddy, wheat, and to a certain extent cotton, where the Cotton Corporation of India comes into the picture. The MSP is actually implemented. So what we are asking for is that in all the crops where the MSP is declared, it should be implemented. What does it mean it should be implemented? What it means is that when the market price goes below that minimum support price, then there should be an effective government intervention to ensure that at least that minimum price is obtained by the farmers. And there has to be a certain amount of procurement. We are not saying that all the crops should, the entire produce should be procured, but certain amount of procurement is also necessary to keep up the MSP. It is good that in the last few years some pulses procurement and so on has started, but it has to be expanded to include more pulses and oil seeds and so on, and that also has to be included in the food security system. So this ties back to your first question about sustainability and paddy wheat system in Punjab and so on. See, basically the problem is that MSP is announced in so many crops, but the government makes an effective intervention only in paddy and wheat, and that is the problem that we have also been highlighting. If the government actually makes an effective implementation of MSP in jowar, in bajra, in tur dal, in oil seeds, in groundnut, and so on, then you will find much more diversification of cropping pattern that happens. That is the other thing that we should realize, that our demand is definitely for diversification, which will lead to more sustainability rather than less sustainability, which is there currently. So you expand the minimum support price implementation. The third thing I would like to say is that minimum support price set by the government also sets a benchmark. So it means that it's not relevant only in places where the government purchases the entire crop, like in Punjab or Haryana. Almost like 90+% of the wheat and the rice are procured, but also in other places where the government procurement may be a certain percentage. It could be 20-30% or whatever, which is the case in many other states for their own civil supplies department and so on. But that intervention by the government actually sets the benchmark for the rest of the private market also. The private market prices of paddy are also then benchmarked at the MSP. And this is the thing which we need to realize. And for example, Chhattisgarh has demonstrated over the last 10 years that the paddy farmers of Chhattisgarh, have found that it become really remunerative once the government has put in place a local procurement as well as a good public distribution system. And whereas in Bihar, they have not done that. This is the other thing that needs to be realized, that just the fact that how much percentage of the crop is directly purchased by the government is not the only significant thing. The fact that MSP is implemented seriously and there's a market intervention system is the important thing. So what we have
so it's a combination of things
is that and we've actually come up with a bill which is also placed in the parliament for a legal guarantee of MSP, which includes all these elements, effective government intervention, procurement, as well as saying that, in any of the APMC mandis, every day there is an auction, for every crop in the morning. When all the traders and the farmers who bring their produce, there is actually an auction where the highest bidder, gets the, that sets the price, for that day. We are demanding that, in the auction, the floor price should be set at MSP, because you have a regulated market yard, and there's no meaning to MSP if you actually have the price, auction price below the MSP. So these kind of, and similarly in any contract farming, we are saying that, the contract price, the minimum contract price should be the same as the MSP. And if this is something which is implemented across the country, then it goes a long way towards actually making farming economically viable for the farmer. So this is
you're basically
a big.
So Kiran, So you're talking about.
I would just like to add one more thing.
Please.
No, just like to add one more thing, Venu, that this is one big step. Ensuring MSP would be a big step towards making farming economically viable. Of course, it has to go together with a whole set of other reforms, what we would call as reform. Generally the reform term is used both in TV channels and everywhere as something where if the corporates like it, then it's called reform, otherwise it's called a subsidy or something else. But the reform that we are talking about, right. So the reform, it has to go hand in hand with some of the other reforms that we are talking about, including things which promote ecological sustainability, crop diversity, and so on, as well as ensuring that the small marginal farmers have access to credit. Right now, one of the reasons why the farmers get low price is because they are caught in a nexus. See, they don't get credit from the banks, right? So therefore, they go and get credit from the local business person, who's also an input dealer. That same person sells fertilizers and pesticides and seeds. So you buy it from him on udhar, on credit, and then once you grow the crop, first of all, you charge high interest, like 24 to 36% interest,
Yeah.
and then the same business person also is there to purchase your cotton or whatever crop you are growing. So you can't bargain the price with that person because he's the one who's actually given you the credit. So by being locked in this system, actually the bargaining power of the small money farmers is very weak. So therefore, they have to be extricated from this kind of situation also. So these reforms have to go hand in hand with the MSP guarantee thing, and then you will find that farming becomes much more viable. And the other element is to strengthen the farmer producer organizations.
So Kiran, I completely broadly agree with what you said. Now, the instrumentality of how to achieve this, can this be achieved without putting, say, MSP, a price, a number in the legislation, or can this also be achieved by putting the core of MS Swaminathan Commission recommendation in the form of some legislation that a certain minimum return over cost should be guaranteed to the farmer, and each state works out, regulators sit with farmers in each state, since agriculture is state subject, and they work out their own respective minimum price above which various products should be sold. At the moment, the whole system of determining MSP is a very centralized exercise. CACP comes up with some costing for whatever, rice and wheat, whatever is there. And the costs are different in Punjab, costs are different in Bihar, Orissa, but we come up with a common kind of costing for all these states. Now, these things have to change. This exercise, doesn't this exercise have to get much more decentralized? The costing, the working of the legislation, etc., rather than one centralized national legislation telling people what to do, or even mandating an MSP for at the national level for say rice, wheat, or some other product, assuming that they happen. So what do you have to say on that?
So on that, Venu, definitely there are shortcomings in the CACP's way of determining the costs and prices, but there have also been a lot of improvements, and many suggestions have been incorporated over the last few years. I mean, last several years, like actually last 15 years, there have been a set of improvements in that. On the priority, I mean, on a list of priority of what reforms are immediately required, I would not say that, the whole CACP system has to be drastically changed, because ultimately, the cost determination does happen. One second, let me just complete. So the cost determination does happen in a decentralized way. But it gets collated and some kind of average is determined at the central level, which is also fine, because there's a lot of interstate trade. So if you have everybody determining MSP in a very state by state level, that also creates its own chaos. However, the system that we have currently is that once the MSP is declared for across the country, individual states can declare bonus for their own farmers and say that though the paddy MSP is 1800, Kerala, for example, gives a MSP of 2500. So Kerala farmers are entitled to get 2500 by selling it to the Kerala government. So there are Tamil Nadu, for example, gives a 200 rupees on some crop. Kerala gives 300 rupees on ragi. So those kind of things are there, which actually bring in the take care of some state level variations and also some policy priorities. Let us say Odisha wants to promote millets, then they can actually offer a bonus for millets. So I think a centralized declaration of MSP with the states having freedom to declare bonus for particular crops and so on is fine enough system. Some tinkering can be done with that. However, that MSP which is declared through this current mechanism, the problem is that the government is not backing it with ensuring that farmers get it right. So that is where the key problem is. And it's not that the government doesn't, the CACP have said that there should be a legal guarantee of MSP, because every year they are actually looking at in how many places the crops are selling below MSP, and they find that in many states, many mandis, in many crops, actually farmers are having to sell below the MSP. So therefore, they themselves have recommended. In fact, when Ashok Gulati was the CACP chairman, the CACP report says that there should be a legal guarantee of MSP. Okay, so I guess you can ask him that at some point. So which is the same thing that the farmers are also asking.
I know Ashok Gulati had been asking for that. Yeah. He has supported that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And the other thing I would like to say is that the same government actually also said announced something called a PM Asha scheme in 2018, which again, they have a long name. They start everything with the Pradhan Mantri and say I Suraksha Abhiyan or something, Annadata I Sanrakshan Abhiyan. But essentially, the PM Asha scheme, what it says is that this scheme is meant to ensure that once the MSP is declared, because the government knows that this is the key demand of the farmers, but they have not put any money behind it. It actually requires about 40-50,000 crore rupees to be set aside in that scheme and a fund for doing the market intervention. Where it intervenes in the market when once it sells the crop, government gets back the money, and then it rolls over to the next year. You have to set up that kind of a substantive fund to do the market intervention. So though the scheme is announced, it has not been implemented. You look at the allocation for PM Asha scheme and you'll find something like 2,000 crores or something, right? Which basically shows that the government has acknowledged the seriousness of the problem. They have said that we have the intention to fix it, but actually they have not put in the money or effort where where their mouth is, essentially. And now that the elections are over, and this is the other clear pattern that I would like to bring before you, is you see actually a zigzag pattern in the policy of this government. 2014 elections, like you said, clear articulation that MSP, as per Swaminathan Commission recommendation, should be assured to all farmers for all crops. Modi said this in 300 public meetings. After coming to power, they actually come up with the Shanta Kumar committee report, which says, do away with FCI, let's reduce the PDS and, direct cash transfer, let's reduce the procurement and so on. There was a hue and cry, so they stepped back, but in the Supreme Court, they said we can't really raise the MSPs. So for the first 3 years, they didn't raise MSPs at all, just by 20 rupees or 30 rupees, not even keeping up with the inflation rate. So that promise of 2014 is gone down the drain, and they said, in fact, the Agri Minister in the Lok Sabha, on record, said that Pradhan Mantri Modi never made a promise on MSP. This is again on record, we have the video of that. However, when the farmers' protest started across the country in 2017, in Maharashtra, across the country, and in Delhi and so on, then they suddenly wake up and say that in 2018 budget speech, that we are actually fulfilling the promise of Pradhan Mantri, which was made in 2014, which they actually denied in 2017. Now in 2018, they've embraced it and said that, okay, we are going to increase the MSP and assure that every farmer gets the MSP, right? And then they announced this PM Asha scheme and so on. And they also say that 22,000 rural hearts will be upgraded, will increase the APMC mandis and the mandi facilities that are available to farmers and so on.
Yeah, 2018
so once again,
budget,
now
they allocated 2,000 crore for that. For the same
So all these things happen in 2018, and 2019 budget also reiterates these things, right? But then once they come into power, so you can see that how this zigzag tallies with the elections, right? So by 2018, they are clear that they understand what the farmers really want, and they've started promising it. 2019, after winning the elections and now with the opportunity of the lockdown, they have again done a U-turn, right? Now they are no longer talking about giving market out of those 22,000 rural hearts. By the way, if you look at the official figures, just about 200 rural hearts have been upgraded. Okay, they were supposed to do 22,000 in 2 years. In 2 years, they've done only about 200. So they've abandoned that. Now they are back into serving the corporate masters. Essentially, this is how we see it. That post elections, you are doing policies which serve the corporate masters, and just before the next elections, you make announcements which are supposedly meeting the demand of the farmers. And now we are back to the same pattern again. And this is something that the government and its own economists need to explain, because why this zigzag in the policy when you are claiming that, there is some very serious economic thinking that is going behind these reforms.
Kiran, one final question I want to ask you. where is this headed now? The government has hardened its position. Now you are part of the your organization is part of the working group of the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee. Uh, uh, do you think in the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, some solution, some middle of the road solution could be found, or do you think that you are there for the long haul now? Farmers are there for the. It will be a long, hard battle for the farmers' unions, is it?
See, actually, it is the ball is in the court of the government. The ball is in the court of the government. It's the government which has made a monumental mistake in actually bringing these laws, and especially without any sort of consultation with the farmer organizations, and push them through the parliament. Because these agitations didn't start yesterday, right? They didn't start in November. These agitations started in July. On July 26th. That 15,000 tractors were on the roads in protests in Punjab across at least 10 major places, and the agitation on August 9th. They were agitated. So rather than having discussions with the farmer organizations and actually either rolling back these ordinances or doing something about it, they pushed them through as bills without changing a single word. Though the agriculture minister did indicate, before the parliament session in the first week of September, you can look at the statements of the agriculture minister that we have heard some objections from the farmer organizations, and necessary modifications will be made before we introduce this as bills. You don't need to expect the same things will come as bills.
So you're saying this has been going on for a while.
But yeah. It has been going on for a while. It's just that, to capture the attention of the national media, you have to come to Delhi. That's one unfortunate situation which is there. Secondly, even the government also, has kind of playing the role of the ostrich deliberately by ignoring all these protests. And September 14th, when the parliament session began, right in front of the parliament, there was a dharna by the farmer organization saying don't introduce these ordinances as bills. But they did introduce it without any kind of changes in the the ordinances, and then they pushed them through. All of us know what happened in Rajya Sabha. Actually, in Rajya Sabha, majority of the members were asking for it to be sent at least to a select committee. Even that was ignored. Vote was not taken on that. It was pushed through voice. All that happened, right? So essentially, it's the government which has made a monumental mistake in pushing through these things over the objections of the farmers. And now that actually farmers have really come to the gates of Delhi and really, holding a blockade, then the government is coming forward with some very lukewarm and, superficial kind of amendments that they are offering. That just doesn't cut it. So, question about what is the way forward?
Kiran, besides what is the way forward, are you certain that small farmers, the government may be trying to drive a wedge between, there are differing interests, right? So are the farmers, unions, small farmers and large farmers convinced that they will stay together in the next few weeks and that they will not split?
Yeah, actually, see, the unity between the farmer organizations has been quite remarkable in this whole phase, in sticking to the demands, in actually presenting a united front, because this is not just being driven only by Punjab farmer organizations, and even within the Punjab farmer organizations, let me say, there are about 30 or 32 of them. There are organizations of big farmers, there are organizations of agriculture workers, landless agriculture workers unions are also part of those 30 organizations, and there are organizations which work primarily with small, marginal and Dalit farmers. So within Punjab, across the board unity definitely there. Across the country, also all kinds of farmer unions have come together for this. People who work with small marginal farmers, as well as people who work with, let's say, sugarcane farmers of Uttar Pradesh, and irrigated farmers, dryland farmers, even Adivasi farmers. Now from Gujarat, there are a whole bunch of about 1,000 farmers who are planning to come to Delhi. So that across the board unity against these laws is definitely there, because these are laws that hurt the interests of every section of the farming community. So that is there. So road forward, I think that essentially the government has to take a step back, on these laws, and say that, okay, we won't take it as an insult. We'll take it as a, they can say that, they are being very, democratic and high principled in terms of rolling back these laws, and go back to the drawing board. See, reforms in APMC is something that, have been talked about earlier also, and many of these reforms have already been brought about. So if you want to bring in certain things which make things better for the farmers, and for the agriculture sector as a whole, welcome, but please do it in consultation, and don't do things which the Adanis and Ambanis and Reliance want, and have practically written into the bills to the detriment of the farmers. This is something that is not going to be acceptable.
So basically you're saying
it depends on the wisdom of the government.
Okay, basically you're saying government should withdraw these laws and reconstitute the laws, new farm laws, in consultation with the farmers. That's what you're saying, right?
Right. Yeah. That's what I would say is a reasonable position. It's not an extreme position.
Okay. Thank you, Kiran, for talking to us and giving us an elaborate peek into what the farmers are thinking of, what the farmers union they're thinking. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
द वायर के और वीडियोस देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन पर क्लिक करें। स्वतंत्र पत्रकारिता की आर्थिक मदद करने के लिए डिस्क्रिप्शन में दिए गए लिंक पर जाएं और अपनी राशि चुनें।